Hello and welcome back to another Saturday with Coriander Quilts. I am so excited to have all of you here. And before we kick off this video, I wanted to thank you for all of the kind comments you left me in regard to my announcement last week about my family and I's upcoming move. It was fun reading down through all of those comments and your encouragement and just words of wisdom from some of you that have moved recently. That was very helpful to hear and very encouraging. So thank you for that. And also, thank you for all of the lovely comments that you guys have been leaving about the backdrop for Nicole. I was reading her some of those comments as she was working on shipping yesterday, and those were fun to read down through as well. The other thing I wanted to mention about this backdrop that Nicole also came up with an idea for was to offer a backdrop pattern bundle. So we have done just that, and some of you have already noticed this because I've been selling these bundles all week. But what we've done is we have bundled together a 4-piece pattern bundle of the quilts that are hanging behind me. So we have Scrappy Evergreens here, and then we have Wishes. This is the Wishes quilt, and then also this quilt over here is Wishes as well, just in a dark background. And then, so that's 2 patterns. Dearly Loved is the 3rd pattern in the bundle, and then Ribbons All Around is the 4th pattern in the bundle. So we've put them all together into one easy bundle in case you have been admiring the quilts back here, wishing you could just snatch them all up in one purchase. It's a little bit of a discount too to purchase the 4 rather than each singly. Now, if you wanted each one individually, they are for sale in that format as well, and all of the patterns are in paper or PDF that are hanging back here. So you have Nicole to thank for that fun idea, but I wanted to make sure and mention that because I hadn't mentioned that in last week's video. So two thank yous. Thank you for the fun comments on the backdrop and for the encouraging comments on our upcoming move. We have been busily packing away. I've started working on my quilts and those are getting packed away, and we filmed the sewing studio space. You're going to get to see that in just a little bit here. I'm going to have some chatty chat to begin with, but in a little bit I will also take you up and show you the sewing space, and then I can start packing all of that up. So we are making progress on some of those areas, and we've been decluttering and moving things out in some of the other rooms, and slowly but surely we are getting there. It's a little more hectic over the holidays, but at the same time, my husband has a little bit more time off over the holidays. Chloe is back home, so it really has worked to be a good time to be packing and moving on out. So some fun things in today's video. That sewing tour coming up, and I'm going to kick things off with a viewer Q&A, so stick around. All right, before we move to the sewing space, I'm going to go over some fun questions that I have gotten over the last couple weeks. I'm going to start with this question from Patricia Allen, 3138. She says, when ironing material that has been starched, should you use steam or dry iron to smooth the material? Well, I am a steamer all the way, so even when I starch, which is not that often, I still use steam in my iron to press those fabric pieces. Depending on who you talk to, you are going to get different answers. Some people don't use steam at all. Some people prefer a dry iron on starch, some steam. So it's really going to be personal preference. But since I love steam all the time, I do, well, not quite all the time. There is one time where I don't use steam, and that is if I am using paper for any sort of piecing. So triangle paper or paper piecing, those are times when I do not use steam, because the steam can actually shrink your paper and result in pieces that are too small. So no steam for that, but in every other circumstance, I'm pretty much probably going to be using steam. So I would use steam on a starched piece of fabric. The next question comes from Janelica. I'm sure that's wrong. 5328. So her first name, Janelle Ikata, maybe. And her question is, when you are only pressing some of the seams in your blocks open, how do you handle the joining of 2 blocks where one seam is pressed to the side and the other seam is pressed open? In this case, one side of the seam has 1 layer of fabric and the other has 3. We occasionally run into this when we are piecing blocks, depending on the pressing instructions. So what I've done is I have two different pieced chunks here, where I have my seams pressed open for one unit and I have seams pressed to the side for the other unit. And what we want when we're sewing these together is we're going to want this seam right here to align with the stitch line that you can see right here. And when you are doing seams that are pressed in opposite directions, it's pretty easy to feel when those seams butt up together. But in a circumstance like this, it's not always as easy to feel if your seams are lining up as they should. You still can to some degree. So when you align these, you can kind of feel if it is butting as it should, but you might find that you need to either just flip this down and make sure that it's where you want it to be. You want to make sure that this right here is lining up with this seam right here for both sections there. So right here you can see it's a little bit off. So you would just want to tug that over just a little bit to make sure that that lines up nicely as well. You can also tuck it down just a little bit like that so that you have a little bit more space to make sure that everything is lining up. And then once you have it lined up as you'd like it to, if you are a pinner, you're probably already going to be pinning. I typically don't pin, but for something like this, when I have seams pressed open, or for a seam that I cannot feel as nicely when I am sewing it in the machine, whether it butts up nicely or not, I do like to pin. So then go ahead and pin your seams as you prefer, and then sew those together. But that's how I would approach sewing those two units together. All right, next question comes to us from Gal Kiwi. She says, what is your favorite block and why? One of my favorite blocks is the Ohio Star block. I have a lot of blocks that I like, but because I was born in, lived in Ohio my whole life, the Ohio Star block is a fun one for me. I think it's easy to piece. It's a simple one. It usually turns out pretty nicely. We have so many great tools and techniques to make those quarter square blocks in an Ohio Star block. So they come together nicely, and I think they look really nice in a lot of different quilts. The one thing that I have thought would be fun to do would be to do just focus on all of the state blocks. I don't know how many there are. I don't even know if there's one for every state or not. I would have to look and see, but to kind of take a deep dive into those state blocks and make a quilt using all of them, and then kind of look at the history of the blocks as I was making them, I've always thought that would be fun to do. There might even be a book out there that is compiled in a way that would make that really accessible, but that's something that I've thought about that would be fun to do. But for me, an Ohio Star block is a special one. A question from Mariana Esther Weiss, 720. Again, I apologize if I am just butchering your names when I say them. I know I'm getting some of them wrong. She says, I want to start with this hobby, but I do not know where to begin. Do you have a beginner video for beginners? I do not know what kind of batting or anything. Please, could you direct me? Thank you so much. I don't have a beginning quilting video, but one that I recommend to people asking this question is the series over on Fat Quarter Shop's YouTube channel. I'll link to it in the description box below this video. I find it to be a really nice entry-level beginner quilting series, starting from, what tools you need, sewing machine information, quarter-inch seam allowances, pressing, all of those things that you hear about but you might not know how to approach when you're very first beginning. And then Kimberly walks you through piecing very simple blocks and then adding on, building those skills into some different types of blocks, and then all the way through finishing a quilt, batting, binding, backing, all of those things. So it's a wonderful series for someone just starting out, and I'll have that linked below for you. Let's see. Okay, the next one is one that I'm hoping you guys can help me out with, because I don't have a lot of good suggestions for this question. It comes to us from Christy Franks 1116. She says, please tell me you're moving somewhere warm. Unfortunately, we are not. We are staying in Ohio, and right now this week it has been so chilly. We are definitely in the midst of a cold snap, so not moving anywhere warmer, but moving a little bit of a ways from our current home. She says, I'm missing my home state of Arizona as we move into winter here in Ohio. Ohio winters are not ideal. Her question is, I can't remember if you've answered this before, but what are some of your favorite channels on YouTube to watch for sewing inspiration? And here's where I'm not much help. I don't watch a lot of sewing and quilting related YouTube channels. I watch some different art related YouTube channels. Just last night, I was watching the most interesting tattoo channel. I'm not necessarily into tattooing. I'm not necessarily opposed to it either. It's just not something I spend a lot of time thinking about. But the artwork that these people were putting together was just amazing, and I was very intrigued by it. So I did watch that for about half an hour. There are some other art channels that I also enjoy watching that are very interesting, more art themed rather than sewing or quilting themed. But I am sure that there are those of you watching right now that have some definite favorites. And so I would love if you would leave your favorite YouTube sewing and quilting channels down in the comments below. And I know there's a lot of really big channels that are popular, but if you like some of those smaller channels, I would love to hear about those, because those are some of the ones that seem to be overlooked and we might not be as familiar with. So please let us know your favorite sewing and or quilting channels so we can check them all out and just have a great resource down in those comments below. All right, now, okay, I have a question, but we're gonna have to wait just a little bit to answer it, but I'm gonna read it and then you'll understand why we're waiting just a little bit. But it comes from CRE8N4MYSOL. And she says, please, can you show your ironing board? A couple weeks ago, I mentioned I had a very large ironing board. And she says, where did you get it? It's so hard to find an ironing board big enough for ironing yardage. Love the genuine content. Thank you for the inspiration and willingness to teach your knowledge. In the sewing room studio, we're headed there in just a moment. I am going to show my ironing board. So hang tight and we'll see that in just a bit. And then the last thing is a viewer comment of the video. This came to us from Elaine Williams 7184. And she says, oh my, a new house. How exciting. I love the $5 pattern. So last week I shared the December $5 pattern of the month. If you missed that video, be sure to check it out. And then I also shared a free scrappy block, this little scrappy gifts block. I have a free PDF pattern for this block over on my blog. Last Saturday is when I shared that. And this is from a series of scrappy blocks that I've been sharing here over the last probably 2 years or so. So I've got a whole lineup of these fun scrappy blocks. And she said, would it not be fun to put the tree block and the present block together somehow in a table topper or quilt? Normally I watch Saturday when the video is released, but was out of town, so just now getting to watch. Can't wait to see the tour of your space. So that tour is coming up in just a minute, but to answer your question, yes, I think that would be super cute. These are the two blocks she was talking about, the tree block here and then the gift block here, and you can see that these two blocks fit together very nicely. And I mocked up what the quilt would look like if you were to alternate these two blocks in a quilt. And I left the framing the same. So I did green on the gift block and red on the tree block, which results in this fun mismatched little diamond here, and then the mismatched points kind of around the quilt, which I thought was kind of festive and fun. Of course, you could opt to do all of these bits in the same fabrics, one color, so that all of these would match up. These would match, and then all of these bits would match. And then of course you could do your gift blocks however you wanted to, and your tree blocks however you wanted to. Last week I mentioned I thought that it would be cute doing all of the gifts in different fabrics, so a blue gift, a red, a yellow, a green, you know, whatever colors you wanted for your gift blocks. I thought that would be pretty to kind of mix things up. But I quite like it in the red and green as well. And then if we wanted to So this layout is, the blocks are 12 inches, so it's 48 by 60 if you do 4 blocks across by 5 blocks down. But if you wanted to do something, you know, do a little tabletopper size and just do 2 by 2, it would look something like this right here. 2 by 2, and this would result in a 24-inch square little topper. Or if you wanted to do a runner, 2 by 4, this would be 24 by 48. You could do something a little bit smaller. If you wanted a skinnier little topper, this would be 12 by 48. So lots of different options and ways to use these scrappy blocks. But I thought that was a great question, great comment, and I wanted to take just a little bit of time to show what that would look like mixing these 2 blocks together. And that wraps up the viewer Q&A and viewer comment of the video. We are now going to head upstairs to my sewing studio, and I'm going to share my space with you. I do spend a lot of time in this area. You know, I've been designing fabrics for Moda for about 10 years, a little more than 10 years maybe, and designing quilt patterns for even longer than that. It's my job, and I do spend a lot of time in my sewing space. So you're going to get to see that, and I'm going to show you just a little bit of the business side of things, the shipping department section as well, because it just all happens in the same area. So I'm excited to show that to you. So let's go. Hello and welcome to my sewing studio. If you watched any of my previous videos way back a couple years ago, you're probably familiar with this space. This is what you would have seen in the backdrop before we moved down to the new filming studio. But I have never filmed a dedicated sewing studio video the whole time that I've been sharing on YouTube. And so today is the day that is going to happen. I'm going to show you this space. We'll kind of pan around. I'll talk about some things. Now, if I don't mention something that you were wondering about, maybe a product name or a brand or something like that, be sure to ask in the comments so I can answer those questions. But we're going to show this space, pivot around. I'll show you the shipping area where Nicole would be doing all of the shipping. You'll see a little bit of that as well. So let's just start right around the corner here. This is the ironing portion of my sewing area. My husband, Ryan, built this really nice, roomy ironing board, and so I've got a lot of space for ironing. I always keep my woolly pressing bar right here because I love using that for pressing seams open. And this little clover pendant thread snipper. I have one on my ironing board and I have one at my sewing machine because I use it so often. And I use it when I'm chain piecing to snip the threads apart. And it's such a nice tool and I love having that. Down below here, below the ironing board, I have these storage bins. I picked these up from Target. They're just wooden stackable storage bins, and I will throw my scraps in the bins by color as I make scraps. As you can see right now, this area definitely needs some tidying up, some moving out of the scraps, but that may just have to wait until we're over in our new house. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. Over here on this side, I have my wool pressing mat. I will use that sometimes. And I have the little binding board tucked over there too that I have mentioned in my machine binding tutorial. So I have got that tucked over there as well. And then if we move around to the back, this is, as I said, what you're used to seeing in my videos, but I have all of my own fabric lines in this section, a little bit in need of some organization, but I feel like I can't organize it right now because we're just going to be moving out anyways. And so it's a little bit disorganized, but organized by color. And over here, which way shall I go? I'll move this way. Over here, I have bolts of solids, bolts of some fabrics that I wanted to have in larger quantities. Some Sugar Creek prints here, a little bit of Peachy Keen, some Coriander colors. So if they are bolts, oh, Ryan has just pointed out to me, we have an elusive Francis coming over to the cat drinking fountain. Oh, she's looking kind of shy, but she is caught in the wild and he noticed her sneaking in. So we very seldom see Francis. So you may never have seen her. You may not know that we have another cat that's not Tiggs, but this is Francis. Very scaredy and shy. She's very scared of the camera. Okay, looks like she's going to make an escape upstairs. All right, we're going to move back over here. I was talking about the bolts. So if it's something that I know I want in a large quantity, or of course solids, I will purchase those on the bolt. And then organized by color. As we move our way this way, I generally keep collections together for a little while. So Peachy Keen needs to be all put in one chunk. I have the rest of her downstairs in the filming studio. So I need to get the rest of Peachy Keen organized. But again, no sense in doing that when we're just getting ready to move. And then I have Starberry here. Down below is Callie & Co. And then way at the bottom is Coriander Colors. So those will stay like that for a little while, and then they will eventually get moved over into the colored section here. I've got a little bit of Hollyberry sort of haphazardly stashed here, and Apricot and Ash. And then down at the bottom here, I have Sugar Creek Wovens. So in regard to pre-cuts, I have those stored in a few different spots. So in this little center section here, I've got honey bun stored. There's a couple jelly rolls thrown in there. I've got fat quarter bundles. Let's see what's back behind here. A few jelly rolls. Yeah, mostly jelly rolls back there. And then on this next shelf here, I've got a lot of charm packs. There are charm packs behind here as well. A few mini charms, a few more fat quarter bundles, and then some fat quarter bundles here too. Ideally, these are all stored up at the top. All of my fat quarter bundles stored up at the top of my shelving, but things have just gotten moved around a little bit and they are no longer all together. Right now, you know, in the process of moving, I haven't taken the time to put things back where I want them to. So my fat quarter bundles are a little bit spread about more than usual. They fit so nicely up at the top, and that's where they will end up being again, but a little bit spread out. And then in this little section here, this works beautifully for layer cakes. So that is all full of layer cakes. And then I will also sometimes store the bundles or the pre-cuts with the collection when I have them organized like this. Organized. We'll get there, but you get the idea. Moving my way over, I've got little minis of just some random fabrics. I need to go through these and see which of these I want to keep, which of these I'm going to be letting go, but just some random things here. And then notions I have tucked down here. I've got 2 bins of notions, rotary cutters, little pressing rollers, scissors, turners, all kinds of things, some pens and pencils. I always have my 60mm rotary back there because I use those so much. And then I like to keep my mini charms in little containers that I find at antique stores or thrift stores. So this is just an old little, I don't even know, what is this? A cute little container, I guess. So I store my mini charms in things like that. You'll see I have some more tucked up here too. And then I'm just going to roll this out of the way here. Coming over here, these are just bins. I don't know. I think I got these at Target or maybe Amazon. Just bins that I store random notions. I don't even know if I want to pull those out and show those to you. They're organized to me, but I think if I showed you the inside of those, they would not look organized to you. So just little notions, 1/4-inch tape. I've got the glue that I talked about on here not that long ago. So things like that. This bin is the bin that has the notions that I use more often, those sorts of things. And this one is ones I use less often. More mini charms at the bottom. In this little bin, I have binding strips. So I will save my binding strips, just the ends of the ones that I don't use. And then if I want to, I can pull these out and make scrappy binding anytime I want. So I just tuck all those down in there. I've got some Moda ribbon. These are the ribbons that come around the fat quarter bundles. That gets tucked down in there too. So I can pull those if I need to. This little stand over here, I keep my smaller rulers here on this little slotted stand. Anything about 6.5 inches or smaller is there. And then you can't see, but back behind my cutting board here, I have my larger rulers, and they're just on the floor right now. This is actually a kitchen island. I purchased it online, and it has a bar that needs attached, and then I'll be able to hang my rulers back behind this part. But for right now, they're just setting down below. And kitchen islands work beautifully for cutting tables if you need something nice and roomy. These little rolly carts, I like having these. Right now, they're pretty disheveled. They're being used to store random odds and ends. These are all quilt tops up here that need finished, need sent off. I've got scraps and bits of projects that I've been working through that just need sorted out. But I've got 3 different sizes, the small size here, and then 2 in this larger size. And they are just wonderful on the wood floor because I can roll them around, put them where I want them, and use them for whatever I need them to. So I really like having those. I think I got these from Michael's, if I remember right. And the reason I purchased them initially is they are long enough that I can lay bolts of fabric across. So when I would get in shipments of fabric from Moda, sample fabric, it just stacks on here so nicely. So that's how it started. And I found that I just really like having them, and I'll use them for quilt blocks or quilt tops or in progress, those sorts of things. And it works really nicely for me. So slide that over. Here, up here, you're going to see some more bolts, a lot of white on whites, background fabric that I like having. Up at the top up here, you know those samples that I have been showing you guys recently where we are mixing and matching fabric lines? That's where I store all of those up on that top shelf. I don't know if I mentioned or not, these are the IKEA Billy bookcases, and we've added the extra extension at the top. So they're nice and high and they work beautifully for storage. So as we move down this way, this is my bin of Tildas. You guys know that I love having Tilda fabrics. So this is kind of Tilda fabrics all just sort of stashed in there. Down here, this is a block of the month that I have not started yet from a couple years ago. It's one of those fig tree mystery ones. So I've got those all stored together, just waiting. I mean, they're so pretty. Look at this one. Isn't that beautiful? So I've got those just kind of tucked, just waiting for the right time. And then these are just odds and end patterns. There are some paper pads in there, triangle paper, that sort of thing. So that's what's in those bins. These different bins, I have different things stored in. So like this one has just a whole bunch of solids, just folded solids. And I will pull out these bigger pieces of solids when I am deciding on solid colors for my fabric line. So I like to have these big pieces. So that's where those are stored. This bin and this bin are the same. This bin up here just has a mix of, I think it's buttercup. Let me just pull it down. Yeah, it's a whole bunch of buttercup and slate. There might be some pepper and flax in there. There's some springbrook in there. And they all mix together in this beautiful yellow and gray and blue palette. So I just keep all of those together. They're just sort of hanging out there till I decide what I want to do with them. This is the same thing with Beautiful Day. So these are coordinated scraps rather than sorted out by color. And if I have a bunch of them that I want to keep together, this is where you're going to find those. I've got white on whites in this bin. What do we have here? Oh, these are a bunch of creams and blacks and grays, just sort of mixed in there. So these are more coordinated scraps, I guess I would say, in all of these bins. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Over here, as we work our way over to this side, these are 108-inch wide backings and some 60-inch wide backs. I've got the Minkies. You know, I've been backing a lot of my charity quilts in the Minkies, so I have Minkies in cream and white on the bolt, and then more 108-inch wide over here. And then I'm actually going to have Ryan turn around because my sewing machine is right behind him. So we'll just come over this way. So then this is my sewing area. This is a nice sewing table that I have purchased not too long ago. I think I've had this for about two years or so. I almost said 2 hours. I've had it longer than 2 hours. I will see if I can link to this exact sewing table. The nice thing about these is that they make different of these inserts, so you can have this nice sewing flat space that fits whatever sewing machine you're using. I use my Juki for all of my piecing, so I had it to fit my Juki sewing machine. Over here, I'll have Ryan come a little closer. I always keep one of these little yardstick boxes right beside my sewing machine, and it keeps all of the items that I want handy when I'm sewing. So seam rippers, I've got bobbins that are filled up, ready to go, wonder clips, there's the little clover thread snipper I was talking about, and then my alphabetties, sewing machine needles, and then little cleaners for when I clean out my sewing machine. I will typically wind up 5 bobbins and use 5 bobbins worth of thread, and then once those are used up, I will oil the machine, change the needle, and give it a thorough cleaning. So every 5 bobbins is when that happens. So I keep all of that handy right there. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a peek onto this side of the room as well. This is where all of the shipping happens. I have all of my patterns stored here. They're all in number order, so we can quickly grab those and get those shipped out to you. We also ship larger orders to quilt shops and to distributors, so we have a lot of shipping boxes on the top of our storage here for shipping out those larger orders. I will be very glad when I no longer have to have those boxes stored in the same place as the patterns, but for right now, it does the trick. Nicole's desk is the desk in front of the windows there, and then my desk is the desk on the left. And that's a little bit of a peek into where all of the shipping happens. I hope you have enjoyed that peek into where I spend a lot of my days working. It's always fun sharing that with you. If you have any questions about anything I talked about, or maybe something you wished I had talked about, a brand, a notion, something I didn't show as well as you had hoped, please let me know. I'm happy to answer those questions. And if you have a question that you would like answered in an upcoming video, something quilting and sewing related, be sure to leave those for me as well down in those comments. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I will catch you again next time.